Hi, my name's Cameron Jacobs alongside Rick Cower. We're with the product training team for Blue Ox.
Today we're going to be discussing all things towing with weight distribution hitches.
The primary objective of a weight distribution hitch is basically when we back up a truck and we drop a trailer onto that ball on the back of the truck, we sink the rear end and we put an abnormal amount of weight on the rear axle of that truck. The idea of weight distribution is to create an opposing force and help distribute that weight evenly between all the axles. Weight distribution hitches are not universal or one size fits all. It's also not the case where bigger is necessarily better. With weight distribution, we're trying to offset a certain amount of weight depending on how much vertical load that trailer is bringing down on the back of the truck. So we want to have the right size weight distribution hitch with respect to our trailer and our truck. A good weight distribution hitch is absolutely worth the investment. The simplest way to say it is, if you don't feel comfortable and confident getting to and from a campsite, you're not going to go camping that much and you're not going to get your money's worth out of that investment. Weight distribution and sway control hitches are absolutely going to be necessary, especially when it comes to a travel trailer. One of the primary causes of trailer sway is having an unbalanced load. And with a travel trailer, it's unlike other types of trailers in that towing might not be the #1 priority. It obviously needs to be towable, but the top priority is probably more so comfort at the campsite. And so with that, we have load in different places. We have a higher center of gravity. That big travel trailer can act as a parachute back there. And so with a travel trailer, a good weight distribution hitch is going to give you a much more enjoyable and comfortable ride. A weight distribution hitch is not typically required by law. It's just going to give you a more comfortable ride. All of our dealer partners install weight distribution hitches. The easiest way to find them is blueox.com and tap on dealer locator, and you can find all the dealers in your area that do our weight distribution installs. If you want to try to do a weight distribution hitch on your own, you can do that, but we recommend that only if you have experience working with these tools and working with things like torque specs and Loctite. We don't recommend you take on that project if this is kind of your first time dealing with those tools and these parts and components. When it comes to backing up with a weight distribution hitch, all of our hitches in the Blue Ox lineup, you can back up no problem. A lot of customers will see our SwayPro and they see the chain capture of that SwayPro, and a lot of times they assume that you can't back up with chains. Well, our SwayPro doesn't have the same downsize as other chain style hitches, and so with our SwayPro and with any hitch in our lineup, you can absolutely back up, no limitations there. The size of hitch that you need is going to depend primarily on the tongue weight or hitch weight of your trailer. A lot of times we use the gross weight or GVWR in order to estimate our hitch weight, but it's always best practice to actually use an accurate hitch weight so that we know how much weight it is that we're trying to offset. It is certainly possible to have too much hitch. When we distribute too much weight, we run into a number of issues just like we would if we weren't distributing enough weight. Some of the things that can happen when you distribute too much weight, you can lift up on the rear axle of the truck and lose traction. You can tip down the front end of the truck and make for a rougher ride. And in more extreme situations, you can actually stress or damage the frame of that trailer by distributing too much weight. Maybe the simplest way to tell if your weight distribution hitch is working is when you're traveling down the road, you're gonna feel bumps, pushes, and pulls from the wind and those other factors on the road. But one of the best indicators is that when you feel that first bump, if truck and trailer are moving together, that's a good indicator that your hitch is working. If one bump turns into 2, 3, 4, there's something maybe improper about your hitch installation. With our weight distribution hitches, they are very easy to maintain. There is almost no maintenance with either our SwayPro or TrackPro. You will see on the backside of your trunnion a little grease zerk. That both hitches, they're going to come pre-greased there, and the maintenance is just simple as needed logic. If your trunnion starts getting stiff or sticky, you get it a shot of grease. There's no bearings or seal in here, so if you use too much grease, you're not going to blow anything. You're just going to have some excess grease dripping out. But again, just as needed. If you leave your hitch head on the back of your truck a lot while you're not towing, it may need a little bit more because you're going to pick up a little more road grime, maybe once or twice a year. If you stow your hitch head with your camper and you keep it clean, you may never have to re-grease it. As long as it's able to flow freely, you do not have to do anything on the maintenance, or any other part of the hitch needs to be maintained. Your weight distribution hitch is going to be compatible with a surge brake, and your dealership is probably going to make sure that you do have a proportional brake mounted in your truck while you're towing. If you're unsure if your hitch is going to work with your frame on your SUV or on your truck, refer to that owner's manual and refer to the manufacturer of the receiver hitch itself. We do have some situations with, say for example, a unibody frame where they do not allow a weight distribution hitch. Those are rare cases, but they do happen. A weight distribution hitch will work with your lifted truck. One of the accommodations that we're probably going to make is just have a slightly longer drop shank so that we can still get that ball height to the proper measurement. You should not need a special receiver. If your truck or your SUV already came with a receiver hitch, the weight distribution hitch ought to be compatible with it more often than not. A weight distribution hitch will have almost no effect on your fuel economy. If anything, it would actually help a little bit, because again, with proper weight distribution, we're getting frame of the truck working with frame of the trailer, and so your towing experience is going to be a lot smoother. You should be able to take your weight distribution hitch off-terrain or off-road, as long as you're comfortable with that truck on that terrain and that trailer on that terrain, and as long as your weight distribution hitch has enough clearance for that terrain, you should be just fine. You can use your weight distribution hitch on multiple trailers. It's just important to check a few things like the ball height setting and also the bracket height setting or the chain link setting in order to make sure we have the proper amount of tension on those bars.
Factory sway control for a number of years on specific vehicles controlled the braking of the tow vehicle or the pickup truck or SUV as it was going down the road. The technology has changed today where the sway control built into those particular vehicles actually hits the trailer brakes to try and straighten the equation. So it's going to depend on your make and model of the vehicle and how it affects the towing experience. Weight distribution will not interfere with rain sensors or adaptive cruise control or your lane departures, things like that, because once you plug that trailer into the 7-way plug on the back of the tow vehicle, all of that is automatically disabled. So you'll get a little beeping when you back up occasionally, but that's about it. Weight distribution on auto leveling systems gets a little bit tricky. I would refer to the owner's manual of your vehicle. It will give you step-by-step directions on how to disable or maybe make an adjustment to be able to tow with that. Traditionally, what happens with the factory air ride when towing a trailer, because of a feature called veiling in these vehicles, the vehicle gets lower to the ground, so it changes the angle of the tow vehicle to the trailer. Just follow the directions in the owner's manual. That'll give you step-by-step on how to set that up. Weight distribution hitches do not affect the brake control on the vehicle. The biggest thing that you need to know is setting that brake control from start and how you advance it as you travel, meaning that you're going to change that number on that brake control to add more brake at freeway speeds, and you're going to lower that number as you're driving in a city, as an example, so that you're not skidding your tires. So it's really in the adjustment. Most of the vehicles today have an integrated brake control in them, so you'll just want to read up in your owner's manual on how to adjust that. Self-leveling systems in most cases cannot be disabled. However, they have a formula to use that self-leveling system. By disabling them or removing the fuse from them, you chance or risk damaging that air ride system. We do not recommend that you do that. Follow the directions that are in the owner's manual. That'll give you step-by-step on how to set that up for towing a trailer. Active suspensions and load leveling shocks are really the same thing as an air ride system on a vehicle. So if you're following the directions that are in the owner's manual, they're going to take you through step-by-step on how to safely, efficiently, and effectively tow that vehicle without disabling those systems. The onboard computer systems for towing, so going into the tow haul mode as an example, will not affect how that vehicle tows. What that is going to do is change the shift points in your transmission so that you can more effectively and easily tow that trailer down the road. Using a weight distribution hitch will not affect your truck's warranty. They designed that truck to tow a trailer. That's why it has a receiver hitch, integrated brake control, and a tow haul mode in it, because they know that that's what you're going to do. Weight distribution in today's world is still needed and effective, even though we have air ride systems, all of these different features on these pickups. They're not controlling how that weight is distributed or where it goes. Weight distribution hitches in electric vehicles are not a good match because of range. That is the biggest downfall to an electric vehicle. Are there some? Yes. So again, refer to your owner's manual. That will tell you whether you can tow with that vehicle or not. When towing a travel trailer toy hauler, your tongue weight can be affected, and that's going to be a variable as to the load that you're putting in the back of that trailer to start. So you may start with a heavier tongue weight with no toys in that toy box, and then that tongue weight is going to fall off once you add those toys. So it's really knowing with a tongue scale of where you're starting without and where you're ending up with. That's going to give you the most effective hitch combination and make ease for towing going down the road. Towing a travel trailer toy hauler can be a challenge. The SwayPro weight distribution hitch that we build gives you the options of having a heavier kit starting, but the ability of when you offload that tongue weight of purchasing the bars so that you can accommodate with toys and without toys. State-of-the-art technology gives you a great tow going down the road and confidence in your drive.
We are now going to go through the installation of all of our weight distribution hitches, SwayPro, TrackPro, and 2-point. With the installation of any weight distribution hitch, there's a couple of things we need to do to start, regardless of the hitch. First thing we're gonna do, we're gonna make sure we level out that trailer on a nice level piece of ground, and then we're going to measure the top of the coupler to the ground. That's gonna help us determine the ball height on the hitch. So we've already leveled this one out. I'm gonna measure the top of the coupler to the ground there, and I've got just about 22.5 inches. So that's gonna help us determine the ball height. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna use a tongue scale to get an actual tongue weight from the trailer, as opposed to just using the gross weight or GVWR. Okay, so we now have our tongue weight. Right now it is showing me 600 pounds of tongue weight. That is gonna be a little bit off from the literature on this particular unit, but a couple of things to keep in mind. This unit is gonna have dual battery. Also, these propane tanks are empty. The literature is referencing what that tongue weight would be when those propane tanks are full and you have the batteries on there. We also have a front storage compartment that's currently empty. We know that end user is probably gonna fill that up. And so there needs to be an allowance for that as well. But again, always best to start from tongue weight when determining the proper amount of weight distribution.
We're gonna go through the installation of the SwayPro weight distribution hitch. But first, I want to go through all the parts that are included in the kit. We build the SwayPro in a variety of sizes, ranging from 350 pounds of tongue weight capability all the way up to 2,000 pounds of tongue weight capability. So in the kit, what you're going to get is the hitch head with the pre-installed, pre-torqued 20,000 pound hitch ball. So that's already on there for you. In this kit, we have the 7-hole shank. We do build kits in the SwayPro that are 7-hole, 9-hole, and 11-hole shank. So this is gonna be in the kit for you. It's just a different part number. We have the rotating latches here. These are what's gonna get installed in on the frame of the trailer. And this is what is going to load the bars for you. The wrench here is what you're going to utilize to rotate that latch and lock it into place. And then we have the bar here. Lastly, in here, I want to show you the hardware kit that's included. And then we have the instructions also that are included in that kit. The hitch is relatively easy to install. and easy to adjust for added load as you tow that trailer down the road and add load, whether that be load of firewood in the back of the truck, whatever it is. So as different from our other weight distribution hitches, we have a chain on the bar for the SwayPro. The reason being is you can add load to that combination of the tow vehicle and the trailer and be able to adjust for that dip in the middle. We want you pulling level at all times. That's vitally important to know, that we want the truck and trailer pulling in unison, level going down the road. All right, now we're gonna go through the tools that will be needed to install that SwayPro hitch today. So starting from my left, we have an 1.125" wrench and an 1.125" socket. That's gonna tighten the 3/4 inch bolts for the head to the shank. We have a 3/4 inch wrench here. That's gonna be used to tighten the jam nut on the bolt that will clamp against the frame on the rotating latch. We will need a tape measure to make sure that we get the ball height set correctly. An impact to tighten the bolts on those 3/4 inch, to get them as tight as possible, because we have to torque them to 250 foot-pounds. That requires the use of a torque wrench. That's what this device is. And then we have a couple of more sockets here. A 3/4 inch socket, you can either use the wrench or socket on that jam nut. And then we have a 15mm 12-point socket that will be used to set the torque on the bolt that's going to clamp the rotating latch to the frame. And that's it, folks. Earlier, we went through the parts layout of the SwayPro and the tool list that you're going to need. Now it's time to install that hitch. So we're going to go step by step on the things that you need to do to install a SwayPro. So we've leveled the trailer up. We know that that coupler measurement is going to be approximately 23 inches. So we have a leaf spring style suspension on this pickup truck. We're going to mount that hitch ball roughly about 1 inch higher than what that coupler level is. And then we'll finish the install from there. If that truck had a coil spring suspension like a Ram 1500 or 2500, or even possibly a Toyota Tundra with coil springs, we're gonna mount that hitch ball height 2 to 3 inches higher just to compensate for the coil springs collapsing. We're not gonna get that collapse out of the leaf spring on the back of this particular pickup truck. So we'll start the process. We know that we're 23 inches here, so I wanna get to approximately that 24-inch mark ball height, which I'll explain as we go through, and I'll show you on the tape measure where we're at. So the first thing that we want to do is install the shank into the receiver hitch, which is, this is going to be your shank into the receiver, and then put your hitch pin in. That's what locks it in and keeps it in place as you travel down the road. You have a little hairpin that goes over the top of that. And just for reference, I'm gonna measure from the ground to the top of this shank to see where I'm at and kind of give me a rough guesstimate of where I need to put that ball. So I'm at about 21 inches to there. I'm gonna drop it down 1 hole so I have an open hole up here on the top. And then that's where we'll start with mounting the hitch head, and the ball height will measure as well. Remember, when you install this hitch head, that the bolts on here will be torqued to 250 foot-pounds. And we will torque those by hand. We'll tighten them down with an impact to get them as snug as possible. And then we'll hit it with the torque wrench and make sure that we have that torque spec set. Lock washer bolt and the nut on the end. This is an 1.125" socket that we will use on there. And then also an 1.125" wrench to hold that bolt. Now I'm going to get the torque wrench, and depending on the brand of the torque wrench, You want to zero your torque wrench down on this particular model and start from 0 and go back to 250 foot-pounds so that you know you started at the right spot. So I'll run it back up to 250. And then we'll start the tightening process. So there we go. We're at 250 foot-pounds of torque. Throw that 1.1/8" socket on. I use the impact to run it as tight as I possibly can. You don't want to over tighten it because you will open up that lock washer, split it open, and then it's not going to hold. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble the rotating latch and put it into place. The bolt that secures the rotating latch to the frame is a square head bolt. You can use a 1/2" wrench to snug it down to the frame, but you will need a 15mm 12-point socket in order to set the torque spec. I will show you that as we do the installation. This piece threads into the rotating latch. I always take a wrench and get it down a little bit through the latch so that it's less that I have to do when I hit the frame of the trailer. So I'm just going to turn this inward without getting it too far. We're dealing with the 2-inch wide frame on this trailer. So now I will drop it on to the frame. We'll get a measurement of 29 inches from the center of the coupler to the center of the rotating latch, and that center is right here. And to show you this portion of the rotating latch, that sits right in the center of the latch. So that's where we'll take our measurement to. All right, so we have the 29 inches. I'm gonna snug this down to the frame. And no clearance issues with this at all because it sits over the top of the frame. I'll grab the torque wrench and I'm gonna torque this to 40 foot-pounds. 40 foot-pounds is not a lot of torque, so it will come on pretty quick. Okay, so that's where we need to be on that, is 40 foot-pounds. Now it's time to make the connection. This goes pretty darn quick when you install the SwayPro. So I always start with the latch open, and what I mean by latch open, this is going to be the closed position holding the chain for the SwayPro. This is where we're going to release it at. So I put it in the open position, and now it's time to raise the trailer up, get it onto the ball, and then we'll do our connection. I went ahead and installed the latch on the other side of the trailer. So both latches are installed at 29 inches. Now it's time to make the connection to the trailer. As you'll notice with the SwayPro, our hitch ball stands vertical. There's no pitch or angle to the hitch ball. Why is that important? It's because when you get to the campground to unhook, if you're on uneven ground of any kind, having a straight vertical ball will easily assist you getting disconnected. When you have a pitch to the ball, and I mean the ball being pitched backward, there's always a chance of binding up inside the coupler. So this makes it really, really simple to use. So we're down on top of the ball, the coupler's locked. Now we're gonna do something that's called A-framing. So we're gonna lift the truck and the trailer up together to make it easier to connect the bar. So you do that with your power tongue jack, which is just gonna be running it up. And I mean, there's a variable to every vehicle. The trailer height, you're probably gonna be somewhere in between that 5 and 8 inch mark is how high you're gonna have to raise it. Keep in mind, you're not gonna damage your jack. You're not gonna damage your receiver hitch or the weight distribution hitch. It's designed to do that. So I'm gonna raise this thing up, and I always set my parking brake when I go to hook up a weight distribution hitch. Why? Because if I would lift it up a little bit too far, I don't want my truck trying to skip ahead if we're on uneven ground. So I always set the parking brake. That way I can raise it up a sufficient amount of height that's needed to make the connection on this hitch. Now I'm gonna attempt my first connection of the bar. And why I say first connection is because I don't want to have to pull a bunch of tension up to get this bar locked into place or get the latch locked into place. So what I will do is take the bar, I will insert it into the trunnion. This is going to be what's called the trunnion here. I will insert the bar with the chain upward. There's two ways it can go. It can go upside down. You don't want the U-bolt pointing up. You want the U-bolt pointing to the ground. This is a preference thing, but I always put my pins in from the back to the outside. So meaning from the inside to the outside, and then I lock that pin into place. Here's a vital piece of information. When you're loading the bar on a SwayPro, it is always your starting point is going to be 9 links down from the open end. This is going to be your open end where there's no more chain left. So we're going to count down 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. The 9th link is going to be the link going into the rotating latch. So that is set into the latch. I'm going to grab the bar or the tool, and I'm going to put that over the face of the rotating latch on that lug. Now I'm going to roll it up and lock it. Now we're secure. I shake it to make sure, but I want to cover something with you before we proceed. This chain is hanging over the back of the latch. It's naturally going to go there when you go to set your hitch. Take this chain and drop it to the inside. That's it. You're a step ahead by doing that because we tell you in the instructions to drop that chain into that center galley when you go to disconnect. So I'm just getting ahead of myself a little bit. That way I don't forget, because I get excited when I get to the campground. All I want to do is get my camper set up, slide room out, and enjoy the time that I have there. I went ahead and loaded the bar on the driver's side of the vehicle so that we can go through what we're going to do next is load the hitch, get ready to tow and go camping. We do that with utilizing our tongue jack up here. We're going to go ahead and put that tongue jack into what we call as a storage mode. So as I let the weight down onto the pickup truck, what you're going to see is the bars here are going to start to deflect. And what I mean by deflect is they're going to bow. They're designed to bow. That is a heat-treated spring steel that bows and puts an active suspension system in between the tow vehicle and the trailer. Why is that important? You're going to get a lot smoother ride up in the tow vehicle, but you're going to create less fatigue and stress on the body and the frame of the trailer as you tow it down the road. I'm going to come off the pad lightly, loading all of the weight onto the weight distribution hitch, onto the pickup truck, and I'm going to take a real quick measurement of what my coupler height is now. Remember, we started out at 23 inches. I mounted the ball to 24, so I'm going to grab my tape measure. We'll take a measurement. And I just drop down here behind the head, and I look, and my hitch ball height is still at 24 inches. So we did not lose any height. That's keeping everything level. The importance of pulling level is really a couple of things. First off, when you're pulling level, you have better steering control and braking control. When we start pulling dipped in the middle, we're popping the front end of the vehicle up, which is popping a wheelie essentially. If we have light steering up front, it gives you the euphoria of driving on ice. It feels like it wants to skate around, but more importantly, number 2, is if you have light steering, you have light braking. And the last I looked, when I drove here today, was when I hit the brakes on the vehicle that I came here in, the front brakes activate first. You need to remember that. So pulling level is super important. Don't let that thing dip down on you. However, with the SwayPro weight distribution hitch, if that would happen, We started at the 9th link from the open end of that chain. If we start dipping because of added load in the pickup truck, maybe I stop and throw a bunch of firewood in there for my week camping trip, and now the back of my truck is squatting, the front of the trailer is pointed down, that's an equation for sway to happen. All you need to do is run the jack back, down, raise it up in the middle and A-frame it, and then you can grab the 10th or the 11th link from the open end on that SwayPro chain, lock it back into place and pull it back up to level so you can pull down the road. So the beautiful thing about the SwayPro is the adaptability for added load. Yes, you have to stop, put your jack down, A-frame it, but it's easy. There's no adjustment that needs to happen other than that. There's no adjustment in the head. We don't have any adjustment in an L bracket or anything of that nature. So simple to use, simple to adjust for added load. So the features that I love about the SwayPro really lead to benefits for me. Up front in the hitch head, where the trunnion is here, we have something built into that hitch head called caster. It's a positive caster environment. So caster is an alignment setting on the front end of your vehicle. And when you drive down the road, if your tires are equally inflated and the road is flat, you should be able to let go of your wheel and that vehicle will track straight down the road. That's caster, controlling that on the alignment setting. The same thing applies here. We have a caster angle built in, a positive caster angle, so the bars are angled, and as you can see, they come and curve back. The combination of the caster up front, capturing the chain on the back of the road in the rotating latch, is what forces that truck and trailer to travel down the road as one unit. So if you get wind, ruts in the roads, things like that, the trailer doesn't want to sway. It will move the whole entire pickup and trailer simultaneously together. It makes it travel as one going down the road. So that's that caster piece. But the benefit to me pulling with the SwayPro is you see that bow that's in the bar? That's that suspension system getting activated between the tow vehicle and trailer. Why is that important? No one wants to ride down the road and have a lot of chop and bumps. This is going to give you a smooth ride, allow you to make a longer trip without fatigue as you take your travel trailer across the country. So that's really an important piece to know. And then it's the ease of use with the rotating latches. When we get ready to disconnect, I'll explain all of that to you as well. Some key benefits to the SwayPro is really this one thing ideally is we built the last weight distribution hitch that you need to purchase. What I mean by that, we build sizes of 350, 550, 750, 1,000, 1,500, and 2,000 pounds of tongue weight times 10 for the trailer weight. So as an example, the 350, those bars are good for 350 pounds of tongue weight or 3,500 pounds of trailer weight. And as you climb up the ladder, the same thing applies. A 2,000 pound SwayPro is capable of 2,000 pounds of tongue weight or 20,000 pounds of trailer weight. Regardless of all of that, those numbers I'm throwing at you, the SwayPro can be up or downgraded in size by just changing the bars. And that's what I mean is it's the last weight distribution hitch that you need to purchase throughout the life of you owning a travel trailer. The only thing that becomes applicable is the bar size. So you can always buy a larger or smaller bar than what you're currently using and continue to use that SwayPro going down the road. Now the kit that we installed today, it has a 7-hole shank on it, meaning that's the least amount of adjustment that we're gonna get, okay? But for those taller lifted trucks, we build all of those SwayPro sizes in a 9-hole shank kit, and then the 350 through 1500, we build those also in an 11-hole shank kit. So we have all of the different needs that you're gonna have depending on what the height of your vehicle is, what the height of the trailer is, all these different configurations. The SwayPro will handle ideally all of those things for you and give you the best towing experience in the industry. One other thing that I wanted to bring to light is how quiet the SwayPro is. This is the feature slash benefit that my wife loves because she freaks out about noises when you're towing down the road. Inevitably, you're going to get some noise from the axle shifting when you corner, different things like that. However, with the SwayPro, there's zero noise that comes from it. So that's an important thing to remember, is you're getting something that is a sway prevention device, meaning that we keep the trailer and truck traveling as one going down the road, okay? We have that active suspension system in between to soften that ride, but then we don't have noise coming from the hitch anywhere. So, ideal hitch for every RVer that's out there in the industry. Lastly, we'll go ahead and get connected, finishing the connection, meaning that I'm gonna connect the safety cables and the electrical and your breakaway switch. Breakaway switch, super important, because if you had some kind of failure at some point, you want that breakaway switch pulled to stop that trailer from going down the road by itself. I had installed these at the beginning of the video when we started. These are called a quick link. We put these in all of our weight distribution kits, and here is why. This is giving you an extension to your safety cables. We don't want your safety cables being taut. We want them to hang loosely so that when you turn a corner, you have some give. You're not gonna stretch them or break them or bend something. These come in all of our kits. This is gonna give you an extension of that safety cable. So they are already installed on the receiver hitch. And all we have to do now is connect our chains, which you wanna drop that down underneath the hitch. I always recommend that you cross your safety chains. And the reason being is we're shortening the distance if you have a disconnect by crossing them. Plus, it acts as a cradle, and that trailer will fall down into that cradle if something happens. So we'll get these hooked in, and then lastly, I'm gonna hook the breakaway switch up, but I don't want to lead you to believe that it's okay by any means to thread this breakaway cable up through the safety chains, because if you need it, it's not going to work. So make sure that you're independently hooking up the breakaway switch cable. I'll run that through the receiver hitch safety cable hookup spot, and then I just put a little carabiner on there and clip it around there. I don't want to drag that on the ground, so that's why I do that, just to take some of that slack. Otherwise, it's gonna wanna hang and drag on the ground. Then lastly, I'm gonna plug in my 7-way cable. That's gonna give us lights, brake control, all the different things we're gonna need when we tow this trailer down the road. There's a lot of tension on those bars. We have a lot of load sitting there. It can vary anywhere from 350 pounds of tongue weight all the way up to 2,000. So the last thing that we want you to do is speed this process up. Follow along as I take you through the journey of unhooking. It's not complicated. We're just gonna use our tongue jack again to assist us in that process. So I will take the tongue jack and raise the truck and trailer up again, and we'll safely disconnect. If you have a manual tongue jack on your trailer currently, I would recommend getting a power tongue jack installed because it makes the process a little quicker, a little bit easier. You're not having to moan and groan and sweat to get your trailer disconnected. So as I took this thing up 8 inches approximately to make the connection, I'm gonna take it up to that height or maybe a little bit more. And we can tell as we go if there's tension on those bars or not. As you can see, as I'm raising the trailer up with the power tongue jack, the bars are starting to relax, meaning that deflection is going out of the bar. They're starting to get flatter, and that's just gonna make it easier for me to make the disconnect on this. So for me, how to check that is I'm gonna wiggle it here, if it was loaded, I could not get any wiggle out of that bar. There's no way that you're gonna physically move that with that tension. So I'm starting to get some wiggle out of it. I'm gonna go up a touch more just to make it easier for myself. Now I'll check it again. You can see that that tension is completely gone off of that bar. But we don't want you to get crazy or get in a hurry. What we want you to do is follow the proper steps of disconnecting. So you're going to get your wrench out again, and that wrench is going to go onto the rotating latch here. Now, you want to have control of it, so you don't want to get down too low. You don't want to get up too high. You really want to hit that sweet spot where you're going to disconnect. In the beginning, I had taken this chain and threw it down through the inside galley of the latch. When you roll it up and lock it, that's a position that it wants to fall into. But I took it and I put it down through that galley. Why did I do that? Because if I lost control of this latch while I was unloading it, the most that's gonna happen is that chain is gonna fall straight to the ground. It's not gonna cantilever up. I'm not gonna get any damage to my trailer, any damage to me. But here's something to keep in mind. Never put yourself in harm's way with the weight distribution hitch. And what I mean by that is stay back. That's why we have the bend in the bar here, is to keep you back away from that latch when you unload it. So you're gonna put the wrench onto the latch here, and you'll have to take the tension off of the pin. This is a locking pin that's spring loaded. All you have to do is pull that up the ramp. There's a little built-in ramp here. You don't need to pull it out, just go up the ramp, stay back of the hitch, and just roll it down and release that chain out the bottom. It is that simple to unload this hitch. So I will do that on both sides, and then we'll make our disconnect, and it's time to start camping, folks. So now that we have both latches released and the chain dropped out of the latch, it's time to disconnect. This is gonna be your preference. I'm that guy that goes kind of in reverse of how I started. So I'm going to go ahead and take the safety chains off. So we'll disconnect those. I'll take the breakaway switch and unclip it. And out. And then the safety chain on the other side will come out. And I'll store those when I'm done. Depending on your power condition of your battery, if you left lights on, you may have to let the truck run in order to power the jack. But in this case, we don't have to because we have full power here. So I'm going to just let this down. I'll remove my bars by removing these pins, and I will set them aside. They will go in my storage compartment when I'm all complete. I'll check and see if my coupler is ready to release, which it is. I'll raise the jack back up, or the coupler back up, and unplug, and then we're ready to drive away, get our trailer level, and start our camping trip. Folks, it's that simple. The SwayPro is the easiest, most user-friendly product that's in the RV industry today.
We are now going to do the installation of our Blue Ox TrackPro. As an overview, this is everything that you're going to get in that kit with the new TrackPro. You're going to get your drop shank, your hitch head with your hitch ball, 2 5/16 ball, pre-installed, pre-torqued. You have all of your mounting bracketry for the frame of the trailer. We've got our spring bars. Again, you can reference the number of markings on the bar, which designates the actual weight that we are offsetting with those bars. So 3 dashes, that references 1,000 pound bars. You've got your wrench. We've got all of our hardware and our owner's manual. Always good to keep that owner's manual and remember to use that to register your product for that warranty. It is a limited lifetime warranty, so limited applies to the original purchaser only, but it is a lifetime warranty on our weight distribution hitches. You will also note that TrackPro is typically going to come with your 7-hole drop shank, but say for instance you have that lifted truck and you know that you're going to need a longer drop shank, we do have the option where you can order a different kit where we already have the longer drop shank, the 9-hole drop shank included in that kit at no upcharge. So instead of paying for 2 shanks, you can just get the longer one that you need in that kit at no upcharge. So we showed you everything that's going to come with your new TrackPro. Here we have the tools that you're going to need for that installation. So we have our impact, our tape measure, our torque wrench up to 250 square foot-pounds, 1 1/8 wrench, 3/4 inch wrench, and 3/4 inch and 1 1/8 impact sockets. I do want to show you one more piece here with the components that are coming with your TrackPro. You will have some disposable blue Loctite that comes in that kit. That blue Loctite is for these two bolts which are going to mount the L bracket to the mounting bracket. That's what that blue Loctite is in there for. All right, so now we are going to do the installation of the Blue Ox TrackPro. The first thing we're going to do is set the ball height. Now, what we've already done is leveled out the trailer and measured the top of the coupler to the ground. That measurement was 22.5, just under 23 inches. So I want to set the ball height here close to even with that, but err on the high side, maybe about 1 inch higher. So I'm aiming for 23.5 to 24 inches on that ball height. We do have some situations with, say, a Ram half-ton with the coil springs that you know is going to sink further. In that instance, feel free to go to the next step up or that 2.5 inches higher. And we will measure that again before I tighten that down. So I've got it there just right about that 24 inches. And then here I've got the 1 1/8 impact socket. We're going to torque these down to 250 square foot-pounds. We are now going to mount the brackets onto the frame of the trailer. We're going to do that using 2 bolts and 2 nylock nuts. And so more often than not here, we are going to mount this bracket on the back side of these tanks. But it's important to remember that I'm going to give you the measurement here, but when I give you the measurement, that relates to the center of the L bracket. So we're not making a measurement to the entire mounting bracket itself, but to the center of the L bracket. So a lot of times that L bracket is going to hang underneath the tank tray, but that's just fine. That's not something you have to worry about. That's actually going to be a benefit to you there. One of the other big benefits here with this mounting bracket is if you cannot get far enough forward mounting behind the tank tray, you can flip this bracket, mount in front of that tank tray, and have that offset point backwards. So you're always going to be able to find a place to mount this bracket, making things a lot easier on you. As we're mounting on the frame here, we're using a bolt and a nylock nut. There is no torque spec on nylock nuts, and so I don't mind if you use the impact here, but with nylock nuts, they should be once on, once off. So go slow and make sure that you tighten them down evenly. We don't want to over tighten those. And I will do the measurement here again, just to check. And so that measurement here is going to be from the center of the L bracket to the center of the coupler. We're looking for 20 to 25 inches. The other way to look at it, I want a minimum of 4 inches of bar exposed behind that L bracket. That will make sure that I have full turning radius. I won't be able to drive off that saddle on a sharp turn. So when I go to mount this L bracket, my most common height setting is going to be here where I have one hole exposed up top. My next most common setting will be here where I have no threads or holes exposed up top. And your third most common will probably be right there where you have one thread exposed up the top. I really don't want to hit these two with the impact because I don't want to over torque these. So you get these started by hand. And the torque spec there is going to be 78 square foot-pounds, but also with those 2 bolts, that's why each kit comes with a little disposable blue Loctite. I haven't used that yet, because I still want to get the bars hooked up and verify that I like this height. Once I know I like that height, I'll pop these back out, add that blue Loctite on there, and torque these down to 78 square foot-pounds. But for now, I can just tighten those down by hand and do the same thing on the other side. So we've backed up the truck, we've dropped the coupler on the ball, and we've got our coupler locked. If we were just simply hooking up the bars, the next step would be lift up the rear end of the truck. But before we do that, like I say, we still want to verify that we like the height of that L bracket. Okay, so when we backed up the truck and we dropped the coupler on the ball, one of the ways we verify that we like the height of this L bracket is you go ahead, put in the bar, and I want to see about 2.5 inches gap between that L bracket and that bar. With our original setting of this L bracket with one hole exposed up top, it was a little bit too high. We had more like 4 inches gap there. So we went ahead and dropped down that L bracket. That's also why I did not torque down or Loctite these two bolts. Now that we know we like that height, I will go ahead, take those bolts out, add that blue Loctite, and then torque them down properly to 78 square foot-pounds. We went ahead and added our Loctite and torqued things down on the other side. We're now going to demonstrate actually loading these bars for you. One thing to note, the wrench that comes with your TrackPro is zinc plated, and the reason that's relevant is the zinc on E-coat actually does act as a lubricant, so it does make it a little bit easier for that bar to slide off of the wrench and onto your bracket. So we went ahead and loaded our bars, added our retaining key, and this is a good opportunity to make note of something unique about this bracket. You may have noticed at the time of install, it looked like it was tipped forward a little bit, and the general assumption might be that it should be sitting parallel with the frame, and that's not actually the case with us because again, we're using these heat-treated chrome moly leaf spring suspension bars. So once I relieve that jack and I start coming back down to travel position, you'll see the deflection work into this bar and it will create flush contact on that saddle. So our hitch is fully installed and looks great. We're level. The only thing left to do is connect our safety chains and our power cable and we'll be ready to go. And we have the quick links included there for you to make it easier to get those safety chains connected. All right, so with that TrackPro, we did our full installation and our full hookup. Now let's assume that we have arrived at our campsite and we're ready to disconnect and start our camping trip. First thing we're gonna do, remember, use the jack, let the jack do the work for you. Lift up the rear end of the truck so that you can relieve those tension on the bars so that you don't have to muscle it that hard getting those bars off that saddle. But we'll disconnect the bars first and then we'll come back down to a more neutral position in order to lift the trailer off the ball. And here when I say we need to return back to a more neutral position, we need to do that in order to get that coupler lock to release before we can actually lift the trailer off that ball. And once we clear that ball, we can disconnect our power cable, our safety cables, our breakaway, and we can pull away that truck. And you're ready to go camping. We are now going to do a demonstration and installation of our Blue Ox 2-point weight distribution hitch. The Blue Ox 2-point has 2 points of friction resistance, and that is your sway control component. As that trailer tries to dance or sway, you have those friction resistance points that are trying to resist the urge to sway. That becomes your sway control. As an overview, this is everything that's going to come in that kit. We have our hitch head with our ball pre-installed, pre-torqued for you. We have our drop shank. We have our bracketry that is going to be mounted on the frame of the trailer. And then we have our hardware or bolt bag. We have our wrench that is going to help with loading and unloading the bars. And then we have our bars for the weight distribution. Here we have all the tools that you're going to need for the installation of that 2-point hitch. We've got our impact wrench, we've got our torque wrench, up to 250 square foot-pounds, tape measure, 3/4 inch wrench, and 3/4 inch deep wall, 1 1/8 wrench, 1 1/8 deep wall, and then a 15/16 deep wall for the jam bolt on the washer stack pitch adjustment for the hitch head. You also have red Loctite that comes with the kit. This will be included. That red Loctite is for the 2 bolts that are used to mount the L bracket to the bracket that's mounted on the frame. Okay, so now we're going to do the installation of that Blue Ox 2-point hitch. First step being leveling out that trailer and measuring the top of the coupler to the ground. We got just about 23 inches there, and so I'm going to set that ball height close to even width, but just a little bit higher, so maybe about 24 inches. And similar to most other hitches, I say we're setting that ball height close to even width, but just a little bit higher, maybe about an inch higher. If you do have something like Ram half-ton coil springs that you know are going to sink further, feel free to go to that next step up, that 2.5 inches higher. Also with this hitch, we are going to have a washer stack and pitch adjustment for that hitch head. Your kit is going to come with 7 washers. I'm going to start with 4. You will typically start with 4 or 5 washers unless you have something like that undermount or underslung coupler, then you ought to use 2. I don't want to see you use less than 2, but you will need to use less washers with an undermount coupler. And we do have a total of 4 serrated washers, so that's 2 for each bolt, 1 on each side. And before I torque these bolts are going to be 250 square foot-pounds, but before I torque those, I do want to create the tension on my washer stack. I'm going to do that using the 15/16 bolt on the bottom. And it's good practice anytime you have that adjustable pitch on your hitch head, whether it be this Blue Ox 2-point or lots of other hitches that have an adjustable pitch. It's important to remember that that's something you should check periodically. Maybe every other time you hook up to tow, check and see that you still have that tension on that jam bolt and on that washer stack. If you can get your fingers in there and you can spin those washers, you don't yet have enough tension on that washer stack, or you've lost the tension on your washer stack. So we do want to snug that back up. And then we'll switch over to the actual head bolts. That's going to be the 1 1/8, and like I said, 250 square foot-pounds. I can hit it with the impact first and then check it with my torque wrench. We now have everything torqued down with our hitch head, so we'll move on to the brackets on the frame. I'm going to give you the measurements here, but with this mounting bracket, it's important to keep in mind that your measurement is not to the entire bracket itself. Your measurement is going to be to the center of the L bracket. So when you read those instructions, it's going to say measure 20 to 25 inches from the center of the coupler to the center of your L bracket. More often than not, that's going to be right underneath that tank tray. But that's one of the things that's really nice about this offset or wedge cut bracket, we call it. You're still going to be able to mount behind that tank tray, have that offset hang underneath the tank tray, and hit your measurement. Now, if you cannot get far enough forward by mounting behind the tank tray, you can flip this bracket, mount in front of that tank tray, and have your offset point backwards, and you will be able to hit your measurement. So we'll go ahead and get that mounted onto the frame. And as I'm going onto the frame here, I have a bolt and a nylock nut. There are no torque specs on nylock nuts. And so with these, I don't mind if you use the impact, but they should be once on, once off. So go slow and make sure you tighten them down evenly. If you over tighten the top one, you're not going to get the bottom one flush without potentially bending that back brace. So you can use the impact, but go slow, tighten them down evenly. So we're onto the frame with the mounting bracket. When we go to mount this L bracket, you're not going to have the nylock nuts. You're just going to have 2 bolts going straight into those threads there. And now with these, we really prefer that you don't use the impact. Just get them started by hand. I don't use Loctite at first. I wait until I'm able to verify that I like the height of this L bracket. So we got our brackets installed on both sides. The next thing we did is we backed up the truck and we locked the coupler on the ball. Now, when we actually go to load these bars, I'm gonna extend the jack and lift up the rear end of the truck. But before I do that, like we said, we're gonna put the bars on and find out where they coincide with this L bracket to verify that we like the height there. So I'll go ahead and put the bars in. And you heard that snap. That snap is what lets me know that bar is fully in place. I do want to bring your attention to this spring pin here because this is not a pull tab. It is just an indicator tab. You're looking for that little snap when you're putting the bar in to let you know that it's fully in. But when you want to go and release that bar, you don't want to be pulling on this. All we want to do is rotate that bar out to parallel and it'll drop right down. So that indicator tab, that spring pin, is just there as we're going in to let us know that we're all the way in. Now that we have that bar in place, I'm gonna compare that to that L bracket. I wanna see that bar about 1 inch below that L bracket, maybe 1.5 inches. And now when I go to lift up the rear end of the truck, it's gonna be nice and easy for me to get that bar onto that L bracket. But now that I've verified that, I wanna go ahead and pop those 2 bolts back out, add the red Loctite, torque those down to 78 square foot-pounds. We'll do the same thing on the other side, and then we can come back and hook up our bars. We've got everything in position. The next thing we'll do, we'll lift up the rear end of that truck just to make it easier to get those bars up onto that L bracket. We'll get those bars in position, and then we'll come back down to travel position, and we'll be just about ready to go. So we've got our bars on and we've got our retaining key in position. So we'll now relieve the jack and come down to travel position. So we now have our hitch loaded. We've relieved the jack. So all we have left is to hook up our safety chains, our breakaway cable, and our power cable. We'll then do a lights check and we'll be ready to go. It's always best practice to crisscross your safety cables. We're now all hooked up. Last thing to do is a light check and we're ready to roll. Okay, so with the Blue Ox 2-point, we've done a full installation and hookup. Now the only thing left is, let's assume that we are getting to our campsite and we're ready to disconnect and start our camping trip. So, get a block under that jack. Use the jack to lift up the rear end of the truck, relieve the tension on the bars. We're gonna disconnect the bars first, and then we'll come back down and relieve the tension on the rear end of the truck so we can disconnect from the ball. Again, as a reminder, this spring pin here is not a pull tab, it's just an indicator tab. So in order to disconnect my bars, I'm just rotating out to parallel and that bar is going to drop right out. And then we'll need to come back down a little bit to relieve the tension on that coupler lock. And then raise it back up so that you have clearance for that ball to get out from underneath. Disconnect our power, our safety cables, and our breakaway. And we're done. Thank you so much for joining us on this series of weight distribution hitches. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to us. We have an awesome customer care team.
We'll see you on the road.